So good afternoon. Welcome to the Alice in Cyberspace Conference. My name is Mandy Galante. I'm from the New Jersey Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Cell. The New Jersey CIC is what we call it. And I will be your moderator for today's event. We're going to start off with a welcome message from Jared Maples, Director of New Jersey Office of Homeland Security.
Hello, I'm Jared Maples, Director of the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. On behalf of our agency and the NJCCIC, we want to welcome you to the 2021 Alice in Cyberspace Conference. This past year has been challenging beyond what any of us had envisioned going forward. It is proven that technology is truly intertwined with our everyday lives. At NJOHSP and the NJCCIC, we continue to be dedicated to securing the cyberspaces in the public and private sector across the state of New Jersey. Our mission is vital to the security of the state, but so too is your participation. And that is why we're glad that you're here at this conference and continuing to think about a career in cybersecurity. New Jersey has a demand for over 13,000 vacancies in the cybersecurity field, and nationally, over 500,000 vacancies remain. We need interest from all levels of society, all people that are interested in the field, to take part, because that is the future going forward, making sure that we're connected and making sure we can secure those connections. A cybersecurity job does not necessarily equate to a hacker, although that is the TV version. And there are certainly people that are white hat hackers that work on behalf of our great state. But there's also educators, analysts, writers, amongst a host of other professions within the field. Women can make a huge difference in cybersecurity, and right now are dramatically underrepresented within the career field. We highly encourage you and are so happy that you're joining us in this conference to make sure that you're aware of the opportunities that are out there and the career field progression that exists. We remain dedicated to diversity in New Jersey, and specifically at the NJOHSP and NJCCIC. To do that, we need to make sure you apply and remain interested in this field. So to that end, any questions that you have, any issues that you have, any concerns that you have about this career field, please let us know, and we can make sure you have all the information at your fingertips as you move forward in this exciting career. One additional point that we want to highlight is our robust internship program. Both NJOHSP and the NJCCIC have dedicated internship programs throughout the year, including during this past year and over the course of the pandemic. Please apply and join us. The more diversity we have in the cybersecurity field means better solutions, means different options, different ways of approaching problems. And to do that, we need to increase our diversity. So thank you for your interest. And on behalf of NJOHSP and the NJCCIC, welcome again to the 2021 Alice in Cyberspace Conference. Have a great conference, and we look forward to seeing you in the Operations Center soon.
Great. Okay, next up with a welcome message is Mike Garrity, Director of New Jersey CIC and our New Jersey State Chief Information Security Officer. Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mandy. Hello, everybody, and welcome. And I want to echo what Director Maples said and express some of my own sentiments. So the Alice in Cyberspace Conference is intended to inspire women who are considering a career in cybersecurity. But you don't have to be female to be inspired by the speakers we have lined up. I know most of them, and they definitely inspire me. In fact, if not for our first speaker today, I would not be in this position, and that's the truth. Many years ago, I reached out to Cynthia Hetherington when I was a trooper in the state police. She was a librarian in Englewood, New Jersey, and I asked for help in researching how to develop a computer crimes unit. Back then, there was no Google, but there was a Dewey Decimal System, and she was really good at that. And so what I can say is that, back in the 90s, she helped launch my cybersecurity career then, and continues to inspire me with everything that she has done and continues to do. And I'll say this, if she doesn't inspire you, you may want to check for a pulse. On the other end of the spectrum, a few years back when I was CISO in the private sector, I was hiring for a junior information security position. And one of our other speakers applied for that position. Essia Yosefa, who you'll hear from next week, was completing a master's degree from NYU Poly when she applied. She was shy, was quiet, smart, a bit unsure of herself, had a ton of talent and an amazing work ethic. What stood out about Essie is that she tutored high school students in math, won some math awards in school. And what came out in the interview was that she set up a computer lab in her bedroom that she would use to teach herself cybersecurity skills. She can do things I can only dream about doing and will accomplish more than I ever will. It's so exciting and inspiring to work with somebody like Essia, whether you've known them for 100 years or you've known them only recently. I celebrate all her achievements, and it really excites me to see that happen. I can relate, similar stories about all the other speakers that we have today. Each one will speak about the roads they traveled or are traveling today. They're all female, yet they are all very different. For those considering a career in cybersecurity or in any other field, your personal characteristics are going to define your success, not necessarily the skills you have now. You can develop those, and those will change over time. Each one of our impressive speakers, and in fact, each member of the NJCCIC team, have these characteristics in common. Personal integrity. In cybersecurity, it's a position of trust. People are trusting you with their information, with their secrets, trade secrets, and everything else. So if you don't have personal integrity, this is probably not a field for you. Initiative. If you have to be told what to do rather than seeking out problems to solve, you're setting limits on your success. And I say this in the Security Operations Center field, where we have individuals that are looking at their SIM tools for alerts on what to investigate. If you're dependent on the tools on what to investigate, like I said, you're going to limit your success. And a good example of this is the recent SolarWinds case, where somebody, an analyst in Mandy, identified the fact that somebody was logging in with a different device. It wasn't an alert that came up on a system or a tool that they use, but it was that curiosity, that initiative to dig deeper that uncovered the entire mess and the entire espionage campaign. A desire to continuously learn. Technology changes in the blink of an eye, and what you learned yesterday probably won't matter as much tomorrow. So you've got to have that desire to continuously learn. Things that exist today didn't exist when I first started. So this has been a great career in order to continuously keep up with everything that's happening in the field. Courage. And when I say courage, that's not gladiator courage where you're going to fight tigers and lions in the Coliseum. It's the courage to face your fears and to fail and to learn from your mistakes. Everyone makes them. In fact, I would bet $100 that the entire group of attendees that we have here haven't made as many mistakes as I have myself. I continue to make them. I'll make them today. I'll make them tomorrow. But I'm going to learn from them. And that's what we really have to do. And if you're a boss or you're a supervisor or you're a manager, encourage your staff to make mistakes because it's the only way that they're going to get better. And then there's humbleness. There's always somebody better than you and smarter than you. Accept it and seek out those people. Just before we came on this afternoon, I told one of my staff members I hated her. And the reason I hated her is because I've been, struggling with this problem, trying to solve it for months. And, I asked her for help yesterday. In a matter of hours, she figured it out and solved the darn problem. So, much smarter than me. In fact, Aditi Shah is, one of our members here in the NJCCIC that attended the Alice in Cyberspace conference just a couple of years ago. So I don't really hate her. I admire her for everything that she can do. Aditi is our ninja here, that she just goes about and does things so quietly, nobody notices until the magic actually happens. With that being said, I want to get you to the speakers. Enjoy the conference. The NJCCIC, is obviously a cybersecurity organization. But being as a state government organization, we're also a public service organization, and our job is to serve you. So if there's anything that the NJCCIC can do to help you on your journeys, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help and offer support in any way that we can. Thank you, and back to Mandy.
Thank you, Mike. Hello again. For those of you just joining us, my name is Mandy Galante from the New Jersey CCIC. I will be your moderator for today's event. We are so glad that you are joining us. We hope that you will leave today's and next week's session with a better understanding of the many ways in which you can enter or further a career in cybersecurity. We are very grateful to our speakers today for agreeing to share their stories and advice from their experiences within the cybersecurity field. So let's do some quick housekeeping items. For today's event, we will have our speakers present for 20 minutes, and after each session, we will have a moderated question and answer period. If you have any questions for our panelists today, please utilize the Q&A feature, or if it's a question like we just saw one about internships, Q&A is a good place to throw that in, okay? You can ask questions anonymously if you prefer. You'll notice that all attendees have been joined to the conference on mute. Please utilize the chat feature for notes to all attendees or to the panelists. Now, like right now is a good time to say hi. Tell us where you're from. Just make some connections. We're at a conference to enjoy each other and to learn from each other. I think I covered all the housekeeping. So let's get started. We are going to kick off the event with a quick poll of who's here. So get your mouse buttons ready. Where are you in your cybersecurity career path? Are you interested in pursuing a career in cybersecurity? Are you in transition and maybe looking to change careers? Did you just start your career in cybersecurity? Or are you an experienced cybersecurity professional? We're going to give a couple minutes, actually a couple seconds, like 30, for people to check in, and then we'll take a look at the results and share where everybody is on their cybersecurity career path. By the way, I just saw somebody say hi from Germany. How cool is that? See, the virtual conferences have their advantages. Okay, we're going to wrap up the poll. Let's see what our results are. So we have a majority of our attendees are interested in pursuing a career in cybersecurity, 33%, and it's an even division among the rest of them. So I think we've got a good mix here for today. Let's get started with our first speaker. I am so happy to introduce Cynthia Hetherington. Mike gave you just a sneak peek at how she's already made a difference in his career. Here's an interesting fact. Cynthia started off her career in cyber by helping to solve a murder case. How cool is that? Today, she runs her own firm, the Hetherington Group, which is a cyber investigations consulting, publishing, and training firm. Cynthia Hetherington leads national and international investigations in corporate due diligence and fraud, personal asset recovery, and background checks. Her cyber investigations have recovered millions of dollars in high-profile corruption cases, including assisting on the investigations of the top 2 Ponzi cases in U.S. history. She's the author of 3 books on conducting cyber investigations and annually trains over 7,200 investigators, security professionals, military intelligence, federal, state, and local agencies on best practices. Boy, we are welcome to have her. Welcome, Cynthia. We are so excited. We want to hear about your pathway to this amazing career and the advice you have for our attendees.
Hello, Mandy. Hello, everyone. And just getting my little viewing options ready. I see I've now got the control here. Okay. So yes, Mike Garrity or Director Garrity gave me lots of thought to what to say here in 20 minutes. How can I share what I've done in 25 years? You know, back when we were both teenagers, he was a trooper, I was a librarian. You know, we couldn't possibly be this old and have aged as far, but, you know, Director Garrity definitely said a couple things just right out of the gate. Be humble, be smart, make mistakes, and be inquisitive. You know, this industry, cyber investigators tend to be very generous people. And I certainly, what should a public librarian be doing in the cyber investigative world? You know, how does this make sense? And by the way, I'm a girl from North Jersey, so, you know, we could say attitude and compunction maybe brought me here, but the truth of it is, it's because meeting professionals like Michael Garrity and Bill Cheswick and all the other experts in the field along my career path, I've gotten myself to this point. And now that I'm here, I'm open to opening up opportunities to other young ladies, transitioning workforce, employees who think that they can make a difference here. And it's just, you know, a group that could get there. I brought in a couple slides to share with you, and I want to just throw some things down right at the beginning, and then we'll open up the screen and get a better view because these working in boxes can be kind of difficult, can it? just in 2019 alone, I was given an opportunity to work with some professors out of Dakota State University who are attached to cyber education, cyber training, and the NSA's Center for Academic Excellence, and improving outgoing military and law enforcement professionals to bring them into the cyber world. Because as all of our directors have told us earlier, we are in a dearth of professionals in this space, and we need everybody. We need everybody to be inquisitive and to come into cyber investigations. So what the professors at this university have done, beyond being excellent teachers and educators in the field, is they've also created this program called Cyber. And Cyber allows us to bring in from kindergarten to 12th grade young women to go to cyber camps, to go to cyber endeavors, to go to cyber groups. So please check out their website. They have the reason I get to go with them when we can get together, we meet at NASA every year with a camp full of young girls where they learn and experience, and we meet astronauts. And I mean, it's just the coolest thing to do, and it's very exciting. In that world, though, what I also see is other groups. Now, so that's an organized group, right? It's a bunch of college professors who kind of have it together, have figured it out, have their PhDs, put an organized program together, and allows us to join and go. Just like our New Jersey KIC program allows us to join internships. Take advantage of those things. But I want to tell you about some ambitious young women out there within New Jersey who have taken a role on themselves. You see, you don't have to be Director Garrity or Cynthia Hetherington with all this experience, or any of the other people that get to do the talking points here. You just need to be ambitious and to step up. And like I believe our last speaker in this series exemplifies that spirit, where she created her own cyber lab in her bedroom while going to college and learning her own way forward. I had a young group of high school students who reached out to me on email and said, "Hi, we run a STEM club. We do all kinds of things in science and technology. Would you speak to our STEM club?" And I thought, gee, how much of an inconvenience could that be for me? I'm sitting in my office. I'm not traveling anywhere. There's about 14 to 20 young girls who are looking for career paths. They had questions. I mean, they had simple questions. They had complex questions. They had 100 questions. I sat there for an hour while they interviewed me in this field to say and answer whatever inquiries they had. You know, they wanted to know what colleges to go to, what programs, what books they needed to read. And I gave them the instruction, the same instruction I'm going to give you as we go through and finish it. The last slide in this deck is, and I'm naming needs. And, you know, these gals would probably be like, really, especially because my picture, by the way, looks the best out of my friends' pictures here, which is always just a fun way to, you know, to tease them. But I'm not the only female leader in this industry. There's gals out there like Amber Schrader, Kirby Pulsis, Cynthia Navarro, who far exceed me in the technical realm. They are real cyber investigators. They are actually cyber tool builders, and they are lifelong friends. I have known these women in the industry for greater than 20 years. And I put in here, always help each other out, even if you don't like each other. You can't not come up in this industry and not step on toes and not, you know, make someone frown or cause a headache, because we are spearheading an industry that is still being created. The ink is drying on the page in front of us while you are coming up behind us to create. And yet it is a mutual respect. It is the again, I repeat, the constant mistake making, picking yourself up and learning from those errors. Mike didn't really stress this point, but I would. It's not about the mistakes you make. It's about how you handle them after you realize what has been done and the person that you become because of it. It's reaching out to someone and saying, you know what, I identify with what you said. I didn't catch it when you first gave it to me, but now that I go back and I think about it, I appreciate that and I want to move on. So we can take down my little slides and we can go into some real talking points about growing you into this industry and giving you some real pointers. And please, I do need you to ask questions in the chat box, because I can sit here and talk for days and days and days, but the truth of it is your questions are going to come with answers. Remember, Mike told you I was a librarian in my first life, and I still call myself a librarian. I'm sure Mike would still identify as being a trooper, you know, when push came down to shove, but we're really the management now. So there's going to be most of the teams that we hire, we build, and we orchestrate and that we manage are probably smarter than us, 5 days out of 6 during the week, just because they're in it. Their hands are in the data, their boots are on the ground. We're busy putting schedules in place and being a vision maker for where this industry is going. But in truth, what we really need to do is we need to clear the path so you guys can get your jobs done. So in the course of my career, to kind of go back to how did I get from a librarian to here, I had a police department, my little local police department asked me, what's the World Wide Web? And the short version of this is that I reached out to any law enforcement officer I could find on the internet, and like all 5 of them back in the early 90s, including Michael Garrity, a couple guys out of NYPD, a lot of police out of California because of the Silicon Valley area, but really just a handful of law enforcement were actually using bulletin board systems and dealing with crimes on the internet, a lot of dealing with cyber pornography and child pornography and very concerning crimes, which still are a problem today. But all I did, and guys, girls, this is, how did you get here? It's fair. Dear Trooper Garrity, my name is Cynthia. I'm a librarian in Northern New Jersey. I am trying to accomplish this. My local police department wants to understand how the internet has bettered your job. Can you write a testimonial? And Mike wrote back and he said, yeah, sure. This is how the internet's helped me out. This is how I'm creating this thing. And, back then he had like a couple of trash 80s and a little bit of, go ahead, go get them. But not enough support because nobody understood cybercrime. Really, the people who lead today were the ones who broke not just ceilings, but doors, walls, and buildings back then. And they had created these operation centers from nothing. But once we met and we started talking back and forth by email and then finally a cup of coffee, we realized that there were ways that we can help each other. So my first bit of instruction and lesson to you is don't just show up and ask a me or a Mandy or anybody like, what class should I take and what book should I read? That's insightful and it's helpful, but that book in that class is not what's going to get you your job or your internship. Come to them and say, you know what? I'm very interested in what you do. How can I help? I'm smart in these 2 things. Gosh, if you're just really good on social media, if you're really good on research, or if you're very good at, tracking malware, maybe you like hanging out in the dark web, let them know that. And professionals like myself will find a spot for you. I bring in and I put my email address already in the chat box. I bring interns on here on a regular basis, and I always encourage them to send me their points of contact and we'll find a place for you. We're not as big as these operation centers, but we do a big book of business by bringing young people in to give them a transitioning point and give them something that they can learn and take away. So again, my first point for you is find something that you can contribute, even if it seems minor to you. I want to help. This is how I think I can help you. And then put that onto the other individual. As I wrote Mike Garrity back in the day, and I was asking him for help, I said my local police department needs to understand how this cyber world is effective in policing. He wrote me a nice paragraph. We put that out there. My local police department was able to get computers from money and funds that they had to write a bigger document for. They became a cyber center. Now Bergen County, New Jersey is, I would say, one of the best cyber centers for local county administration in the state and in the whole tri-state area. They are a benchmark of what a lot of cyber centers should look like, because they asked for help from me and I asked for help from Mike. You see, we're humble. We know we can't do it all, and we reach out where we can. The next place that I look for you to make a transition and a change is in how you're developing your own skill sets. A good part of the internet is developing content daily. And I was busy looking up statistics this morning from reputable sources. And it's alleged it's either 80% or 90% of data has been created in the last 10 years, according to IBM. And as a librarian and information professional, I would contest that, because I would say that data was mostly tweets and social media posts. And I would say, yes, it's data, but that doesn't necessarily make it information or content worth documenting and putting in a bound book on a shelf like Shakespeare. But we still have to cull through it all. And when you have a breach like a SolarWinds, or you've got, Kevin Mandy's company, FireEye, when you have analysts, they have that one analyst over at FireEye who said, It wasn't a button I pushed, and it wasn't an alert that came through a software program, but it was a sharp-eyed analyst who was looking at his data, and he said, this doesn't look right. Somebody's logging in from a point that just seems speculative. That's the person you need to be. I do not hire individuals here who can push buttons. Pushing buttons is not the quality of analysts that we're looking for. We need people who will question the data that's in front of them. They need to be critical thinkers, which is a key phrase that we throw around like a buzzword, but it means something. It means you will stop and question the information that's in front of you and say, this just, I might not understand it. And frankly, 90 out of, 100 times, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I know to question it. In fact, as a librarian, what you learn is you know nothing, but you know where to find the answers. So oftentimes I will reach out to my industry experts, and Director Garrity still gets questions from me that might come through me from another report or technical subterfuge, and they'll say, this just doesn't look right. And I'll say, well, Director Garrity is the more technical person that I know. Let me ask him, or let me reach out to someone at NJCCIC who can help me on this. It just, that's been diminished, or wow, we're going to escalate that. If you see something, say something. And I don't care if you're a high school student and you're like, this looks like cyberbullying. They shouldn't be saying that. That kid looks like he's really feeling kind of blue and sad right now, like way more than all of our regular depressions are. Say something. What's going to happen? The kid's going to be like, wow, you called me out, but maybe you protected a life. Maybe if you see something weird in source code or something odd in your analytical review of documents, you say something. My business in the 25 years I've been here has gone through a lot of transition. And the only reason I'm still here is because I spoke up when it was terrifying. I could feel like you would never, obviously I have no poker face, right? I'm all expressions and I couldn't do that dead eye cop stare interview. I just couldn't do it, because I am emotive. I'm a North Jersey girl. I talk with my hands. So when I had a point to be made and I wanted to be heard and I thought it was more important than my pride, I spoke up and I said, what about this? What about that? And there's always, I'm sorry, but there always is that guy or girl in the room who'll be like, oh, her again, right? It's because their ego can't handle you. So embrace yourself, empower yourself, say it out loud, and I guarantee you, hours or days later, someone will reach back to you. I'm going to give you a great example. 9/11 was the worst atrocity up until the pandemic, measured any way you want. It was awful. But at the same time, we had a scare with anthrax being mailed around the state. And at that time, there was a question as to who was mailing the anthrax. It might still be a question. Well, a lot of you are too young to know this or remember it, but I remember thinking, what's interesting? The FBI or whatever agency analyzes the letters, the mailing, the powder, the questionable behavior, all the stuff they have access to. I thought from my librarian perspective, which is very narrow and very specific, I said, at the time, the internet wasn't as robust as it is today, so you couldn't just look up a senator or find the address of the newsroom where the news hosts were getting those envelopes. So I reached out to Postal Inspector, just the version of LinkedIn that was out there today. I went out there and I said, dear so-and-so, I noticed that you're examining all these things and I don't want to be disruptive, but have you looked about how the address is written? Because oftentimes the patrons, the people who use the library would come in the library and use our who's who directory, just a volume of books with addresses. They would get all these mailing addresses from those books and they would mail out all their harsh letters, or all their fan mail. And what happened was, I said, you should check those. And also because I was cyber, even at that point, I said, do check the log files on NBC.com and Senate.gov. Whoever visited the website and actually did a lookup within the website for that governor or that news anchor will probably be in the log files. It's an IP address you should trace. And I'm the least technical. You guys are tracking mostly in cyber malware and SolarWinds and stuff. We're on the information side. So the postal inspector was like, yeah. And then he called me a day later and he said, that's really interesting. What were those books again? Because he couldn't dismiss it because it was a lead he had to follow through on. And 90% of good policing and good cyber work is from somebody seeing something that looks anomalous, looks weird, is out of character, or maybe they bring some sort of new perspective to the field and then says, there might be an answer to this. I recognize something in that no one else would recognize because it's my crazy brother Larry who writes stuff like this all the time. So you will make a big impact. Speak up when you are really feeling nervous about doing so, and do that. And my last bit of advice, and my 3 points I want to share with you today, is always remember to reach back, because eventually you will be me. Eventually you will be like one of the other ladies who are the Alices of today, who are trying to teach and bring on younger parties, not just girls, anybody who's interested. But we would encourage young women to come into the sector very heartily. And I would tell you, don't dismiss someone younger than you. Don't dismiss someone prettier than you. Don't dismiss someone who gets more eyes on them than you because they created a better report, or you feel challenged by them. I need you to reach back and grasp that girl and bring her up there with you. Because when you give attribution, or when you share with the up and coming professionals, and you step aside and you let them sit in the spotlight. And I would very much conjecture the fact that Michael Garrity, Director Garrity, is much too humble for the podium that he's standing on, because he has certainly earned his way there, and he creates a platform for us to step into and to take over, to move into. He gives us a great example about what we want to look like in the future. We want to be smart, we want to be humble, and we want to embrace young professionals who are coming up, because it's as corny as it sounds, you are our future. And technology in the world of cyber has gotten much more complicated than we ever even envisioned back in the day. If I was in a chat box in a Unix platform on my Rutgers computer when I was getting my graduate degree from in library science, and I learned how to use the chat program, wow, my world opened up then. But today, we have way too many vehicles to chat, to discuss, to share. And if you're not taking an opportunity to learn from them, to embrace those communication tools, and to also reach out to other young women who could be both ambitious or struggling, and that's the real challenge. Help those who really can use your help. Don't just take the ones you know are going to be winners, and raise them up. There is the seat at the table for everybody now. Cybersecurity is an enormous field. For all the companies that I'm at, visiting, and in front of, because I service the corporate security world, for all the Microsoft, Disney, Starbucks, and Dells, they're always asking me, Cynthia, who looks like you? Who operates like you? Where can we find more talent to put on our roles today to help us with our cyber problems, that help us in a unique condition, in a unique way, where they can bring lots of talent, lots of youth, and perhaps maybe a more feminine perspective to what cyber investigations looks like today. Gals, I want to encourage you to email me, to follow up with me, and I look forward to our question and answer series. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks very much to New Jersey CIC for inviting me to be part of Alice.
That was amazing, Cynthia. Thank you. We do have quite a few questions, so if you're ready, here we go. I'm going to pull a couple of questions because they all are about skills. And I think one person put it really well. They said, what are the skills you love to hear a person say, how can I help? I can do fill in the blank. How do we get these skills? So what would you say to that topic?
Mandy, I think one of the greatest skill sets that I can get from a new intern or a new analyst is the ability to write with clarity. We think that it's all going to be about digging through computers and finding the bits and the binary down to the zeros, but a lot of times we can train them to do that. I need them to be very good at communicating and writing. So don't short sight your ability to document your findings, to get to the point quickly. The other skill set I need them to do is I need them to be critical thinkers. They have to be inquisitive. So they shouldn't just sit there on Zoom calls like this all day long, nodding their head. Contribute something, put something out there, give your perspective about whatever the compendium of information that's going on in the field. Don't just talk to be heard, but bring something of benefit to the whole group.
Okay, good. So good. So I've got two people who are building on that topic. As someone who has been in the IT field for 17 plus years, do you have a suggestion for a starting point? So somebody who doesn't have a degree and doesn't have the technical skills, I think somebody said, how did you go from a librarian? How did you accumulate that technical experience? You're a perfect transition example, right?
Well, it's funny because when I was a librarian, you have to remember the World Wide Web was also blossoming. So I grew up with the web, and I would never qualify myself as being a cyber expert. I am an information expert, where the cyber investigators might be learning resources and what we call buttonology, how to run software programs to find forensic evidence on computers, how to bring evidence into court. They certainly need to know that skill set. But once again, the people who actually sit in the stands in court or actually get in front of the corporate executive is the person who can intuit all that technology, frankly, put it in plain English and deliver it to a very busy person in 3 bullets. The skill set will be taught to you. How to get, the data. And in my office, my analysts are all young. We teach them all how to do investigations. I teach them critical thinking with the tools at their fingertips. But right now, we're working on a project which is monitoring the vaccine rollout globally. And we're making sure nobody's stealing it. And it's most of the time, it's a sharp-eyed analyst who sees some anomaly on a computer, because there's a tweet out there that says, I just watched a robbery, or there's an Instagram post of a video of a guy robbing a tractor trailer. And then he calls me up and he says, oh, I think this is a problem. It's not like a lot of technical know-how. Mike said it, it's courage. It's having the courage to pick up the phone and say, I think I see something scary here, and I don't know what to do with this information. Pass it up. That's why there's a chain of command. Pass it up. You will be that next person.
So that's actually, I'm going to make this our last question, but when you were transitioning, as you were stopping, not thinking about yourself so much as a librarian, but entering a new field, which was being invented at the time, granted, but how did you deal with the uncertainty and the instability? I have a funny feeling you have courage. It's built into your bones, but you were making a big risk. How did you deal with that?
Excellent question. After my graduate degree in library science, I went to the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and I received a graduate degree in information technology. And I have used that degree this much. It was big data back then, right? I've used that degree this much. I've never logged into any of the systems I've learned. I've never used any of the software they taught me. It was good for establishing credibility, but because, I was I went to school, guys. I did this. I did the classes. And there was nothing there that was going to be used in today's internet. So you know what I did? I bought books. I went on websites. I asked Mike Garrity for his slide decks because he was still teaching back then. I tagged along on every possible opportunity to learn something myself by hand. I have books on my library shelf on Python scripting because I'm like, wow, I got to get my game up. Now, am I going to be sitting here doing the Python scripts myself? I wish I could. I wish I had time, but I won't. But the Cynthia of 20 years ago did. I learned how to I built all the first websites in North Jersey. I built the first network technology center in the library system in North Jersey. I just did it. Frankly, Mandy, no one told me I couldn't or shouldn't. No one ever called me out for being a female. I kind of showed up and realized one day, I'm like, well, I'm the only girl in the room. And it's not because I was so busy being a girl. It's because I was so busy just learning stuff that all of a sudden I was there. And at the time, the only other people who were really as interested were other men, at least in the world that I was in. And I will say, every one of them encouraged me, helped curate me, helped, build me up. So again, they reached back and grasped me up because I was just young, ambitious, and said, how can I help?
Okay, those were great. And I probably have 20 more questions that we could be asking you, so we'll just invite you back again. How's that? Okay.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you for joining us, Cynthia. This was amazing. Okay, for everybody there, I know you have some questions, but a lot of our speakers will be answering those as we go forward. So let me tell you how this is. We are going to take a break, and let me talk to you about breaks. In between each speaker, we're going to post a slide like this one, and it's going to give you a chance to stretch your legs, take a quick break. These are going to last about 2 minutes, and we're actually going to finish up with a poll before the next speaker starts. That'll give you a heads up that here comes our next speaker. Now, if you are a business, organization, whatever, that has internships or jobs available, you can promote those in the chat right now. This is a good time to do that during our breaks. We know there are a lot of people here who are interested in that topic. We hope that people will consider our New Jersey KIC internship, but you certainly can promote yours in the chat during our break session. So go ahead, take a breath. We don't have any music playing, so it's just going to be a nice bit of quiet for 2 seconds. Actually, technically, 1 minute and 30 seconds, and then our next poll will start. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are. We're going to leave the poll up for a minute. So as you come back from your break, here's our question. How did you first become interested in cybersecurity? We have quite a few choices here. So school or university, work, friends, clubs, organizations, conferences, cybersecurity competition, movies or entertainment. Are you one of those Mr. Robot-like fans, or CSIS, or other? And I'm very interested in what other might be. So you're taking a break, you're stretching your legs. We're going to leave this poll up. Once we feel like everybody's gotten a chance to answer the poll, we'll show the results, and we will be getting ready for our next speaker. Okay, here we go. How did you first become interested in cybersecurity? Oh, wow, our big number, 47% is work. Actually, that's kind of unexpected, to tell you the truth. And then we've got school or university, which kind of makes sense, and then other. So if you don't mind, some of you others, why don't you put in the chat what that was? I'm a little bit curious. I'm surprised that movies and entertainment is so low. I got to tell you. So here we go. Let's get started with our introduction to our next speaker, which is Emily Wicki. So I met Emily 10 years ago. She was a student in my classroom, and that's where I think she first caught the digital forensics bug. Her team won first place in the 2011 NYU Poly Seesaw High School Forensics Challenge, and that made Emily the first female to take a top prize in this competition. And then next year, she won another top prize in 2012. And by that time, Emily had won a scholarship to attend NYU Poly. And once you hear Emily speak, you'll realize that, of course, it made sense that she would join the Seesaw lead team and make sure that more high school students would have the same opportunity to discover digital forensics. So today, Emily is a digital forensics investigator on the Insider Threat Investigations team at Morgan Stanley. In her role, Emily helps protect the firm against insider threats by conducting investigations and working to improve forensic tooling and techniques. And Emily shared with me that in her spare time, while she has a passion for forensics as a hobby, she also enjoys crime shows, ballet, and pursuing her not-so-secret mission of finding the best ice cream in the world. So Emily, I know you're totally going to kill the ice cream project, but we're more interested in your skill set and what you're doing in forensics. So welcome to Alice in Cyberspace.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction. So as Mandy said, I'm a digital forensics investigator on the Insider Threat Investigations team. So that means pretty much that I analyze digital artifacts such as logs on a computer that record when you log on and off, file access, application usage, and internet browsing activities, stuff like that, all with the goal of investigating whether activity poses risk to my organization. It's pretty exciting. I think we've heard folks talk a few times now about how the field is always changing, and what you learned yesterday might not be useful tomorrow, and that's definitely the case in my role. And that to me is what makes it really thrilling. So how did I get here? Part of the story has been alluded to. But quite plainly, when I embarked on my journey into a career in cybersecurity, I had no idea that that's what it was. Right? I was a junior in high school with plans to study ballet and French in college. And some classmates encouraged me to sign up for a digital forensics competition hosted by NYU Poly. When I signed up, I was under the false impression that it would be like an online game of Clue. Everyone knew I loved crime shows and games like that, so I figured this would just be a way to meet people online and play together. That's not at all what it was. Instead of an online board game, I was given a bunch of digital evidence, a zip folder containing forensic images of servers, cell phones, USB drives, computers, and I was tasked with analyzing it to solve a mock murder mystery. I still have no idea, honestly, why I didn't quit when my misunderstanding became very apparent as I was faced with this zip folder that I didn't know how to open. That's how little I knew about computers at the time. I didn't know how to open a zip folder and get to the evidence that then I had to analyze. With my team's help, I was able to learn enough to, like Mandy suggested, win the competition and go back and play again. It was a thrilling experience, especially, of course, the attention of being the first woman to win the award was very exciting and exhilarating. And it really, the experience of being at NYU Poly and learning all of this and the excitement of that encouraged me to pursue studying computer science at NYU Poly. So the prize for winning the competition was a scholarship. So with that newfound passion in mind, I ditched ballet and continued on my journey. The summer before my freshman year, I had the opportunity to help lead a program called CS for CS, in which we sought to teach and expose women to the computer science for cybersecurity concepts. So these were things that we found that their male counterparts often learned through experiences like playing video games, or rather cheating in video games, right? Reverse engineering code to level up or change features or that were available to them at those stages of the games. And this was something that I didn't have a lot of experience with from high school. Like I said, I couldn't open a zip file. So how do we get women in high school up to speed so that they can have as much fun as I did? So I spent 2 summers actually running this program with folks at NYU Poly, but the summer of my freshman year was the most exciting because I got to start engaging with the cybersecurity community in New York City. So once classes started, I also joined the student-run offensive security research lab at NYU Poly, which also had a CTF team, a capture the flag team. This is a team that gets together and competes in online hacking challenges that are supposed to give you some real-world experience in presenting challenges that you might encounter as a security professional. So I joined this team and was the first woman to join the team, as long as the youngest member they'd ever had. So of course that created some friction and challenge and fitting in and that sort of thing. But the lab really became a haven for me. It helped me grow my security and forensics knowledge. It provided exposure to the larger cybersecurity community, and it enabled me to regularly attend and contribute to industry meetups, seminars, forums, conferences across the country. And that engagement in the community and those opportunities really poised my network so I could engage with these groups and have a lot of opportunities through those connections. By my sophomore year of college, I actually took over running the Offensive Security Research Lab, as well as that digital forensics competition that had originally sparked my interest in the field. In those days, there wasn't a cybersecurity curriculum for undergraduates, so I appealed and was granted for an exception to select my elective courses in the graduate level catalog. And I think this also speaks to something that Cynthia shared, in that you kind of have to ask for what you want. And that's been true throughout my whole career journey. There were plenty of times when I was told I was too young, or I was a girl, or I didn't know better, or young was a big one, especially in taking graduate courses. But I knew I wanted to do cybersecurity, and I knew I needed the tool set. So I persevered, and I asked for the exception, and I asked to be included in these groups and have that seat at the table. And then I was able to shine and thrive and show them that it was the right thing. So hopefully, if you're faced with something similar, you can have me on my shoulder saying, sometimes it works out. You should go for it. Ask for what you want. So with that, like I said, I was granted the exception. And these advanced studies, the research that I was doing in the lab, the leadership opportunities I had, all poised me for internships with what had been some of my dream jobs, right? I was able to work with some of the best forensic investigators in the industry. My first internship, again, the youngest in the room, I had to, it was always a little awkward at happy hour being underage. I always had the big bracelet that said, you know, I'm not drinking, unlike all of my peers. So again, fitting in and that kind of thing was always a little hard, but it was worth it for the experience and the exposure to those opportunities that I got. So that was at a boutique digital forensics firm in New York City, and was a wonderful experience. And then an internship the next year at a large technology company in California, which was also a wonderful experience that provided me with hands-on experience, actually investigating real security incidents, not just playing in CTFs, and the opportunity to contribute to open source forensics tools, several different ones, and also make these lifelong connections and expand my professional network. And a lot of these folks also became my friends. So it's wonderful to have people to reach out to, again, like Cynthia mentioned, to ask questions, ask for resources, and to also provide mentorship. I've been past mentees who say, oh, well, you know, this person came to me looking for a mentor, and here's someone who might be a better fit. So that's also a benefit of having a strong network, is finding opportunities to give back and having people who can pass around those opportunities as well when they arise. So then in my final semester of my senior year, I joined Morgan Stanley as an associate on the Insider Threat Investigations team, and I've been there since. My team was extremely supportive. It was my final semester. I was finishing up my work. I was studying a lot, taking graduate level courses, and they were very helpful in allowing me time to complete my studies and also promoting my career, helping me transition into my first full-time role. Providing me with opportunities to speak at internal conferences, funding my engagements to speak at external conferences, extremely supportive. Since joining Morgan Stanley in those last 4 years, I've continued to grow my career. It's not in the same way I would have expected. Of course, I've been still learning technically. The amount of business-oriented things to learn coming into a full-time job definitely has the steeper curve for me. But they've enabled me to do that, to earn a forensics examiner certification, join a board of directors for a charitable hacker organization, and to share my passion for forensics tooling and techniques, and also for bolstering people's confidence in themselves and their own careers at industry conferences like this. So I think we're also asked to touch on some of the challenges that we've faced. And for me, the biggest challenge that I faced is my own self-doubt, which kind of ties into a piece of advice as well. It's important for you to measure your own worth, right? A few times throughout my career journey, I was faced with opportunities to back away, right? I found out that digital forensics wasn't an online game of Clue. Very scary. I could have turned away and just gone back to my world of ballet and French language, and instead I decided to embrace it and see where it went. I was faced with being too young to join the CTF team or too inexperienced, but really I was able to persevere and use that as a confidence boost to push my way in and show them that I was talented enough, despite my age, to do that. And this occurred several times throughout my career, and it was really up to me to know my skills and my weaknesses, where I needed to learn and where I needed to push hard to engage in what I wanted to. The other piece of that is that you might find that people will underestimate you, even people who you trust, which can be the most surprising underestimation. But it's your responsibility to yourself and to your career to keep learning and to keep moving forward and to keep shining, because you have the skills and you have the confidence to keep building them. You'll go very far. So I think that's really it for my career story.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I actually got to fill in some of the pieces that I didn't know about, even though I didn't at the beginning, right? That was there for that. And that's actually one of our first questions from our audience members is, I like the way she put this, so I'll read it verbatim. How did you realize you liked cybersecurity enough to jump off the ballet and front ship? Was it that competition was strong enough to sway you? I'm curious because it seems like a really big jump. I'm curious too.
I'm curious too. And if I had an answer, I would. I think the experience of learning something new and as you're solving the mock murder mystery, you're getting clues. So you're getting that real-time feedback of as you're learning something, you're getting rewarded because you're moving forward. So I think it was probably a psychological thing that, yes, I guess the peer pressure from my friends initially got me to stick with it, right? My teammates. Now, okay, I misunderstood. Oops on me. I guess I'll try it anyway. But then you're learning and you're applying that knowledge immediately. And that is so rewarding. And it's things that I remember being 16 years old, sitting in my childhood bedroom, trying to open a zip file. And now to see where I am now, that's also kind of inspiring to me. And I like to remind the people who helped me get there and the people who, Mrs. G helped me open that zip file. I remember calling her and I don't know what I'm doing at all. And it's exciting to also see those people like Mrs. G and like the organizers of the conference who were so successful that I could be like them. I could do this every day, solve a challenge and get that instant gratification. It's really fun.
I remember being so impressed at your persistence, which I've heard over and over again in this industry, that that's an important skill to, you are so courageous in the sense that, and you said it in your talk, and I saw it in action, that you're like, I don't know, and I don't feel stupid about not knowing, or even if I do, I'm going to ask anyhow. I thought that was an amazing quality that you had at a very young age. So somebody else has a question similar to that. Emily, I'm not a super assertive person, so how can I prepare for a big ask like the one you mentioned for a seat at the table?
That's something I still struggle with, honestly, even to this very day. And I intend to struggle with it probably for the rest of my life. So I totally get you. But so first take a really deep breath. And I know everyone says, well, what's the worst that can happen? But really, what is the worst that can happen? You might be a little embarrassed if the answer is no. That's always my big fear is, oh my gosh, the worst thing in the world is if they say no, you idiot. How dare you ask for that? But no one's really going to say that, right? Would you ever say that to someone? I've spoken at a few industry conferences over the last in my career, and I always get really nervous before I go on. And one of my managers pulled me aside at the last one I spoke at in person, and he said, you realize that you're your worst critic and you're not going to be in the audience. So there's really nothing no one's paying that close attention that they're going to criticize you the way that you would criticize yourself. And that was really helpful too. So when you have these big asks, people aren't thinking of all of the reasons why it's a big ask, right? We have the information and what we think is evidence of it being a big ask, but to them it might be totally reasonable and great. That is reasonable. We're going to give it to you. So I think it's important to really remember that a lot of that's in our own heads. And so just take a breath and be confident that the worst that can happen is you momentarily feel embarrassed, and the best that can happen is you get what you want. And that's usually going to be the case.
Love that. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, so what certification or boot camp or something like that as a professional in the industry would you recommend as being worthwhile? Remember, we have a lot of people trying to transition here, not just students. So, you've had a good start. Give us some advice.
Absolutely. So I think the most useful thing you can do, and the most useful thing for me, was participating in Capture the Flag competitions. And of course, this digital forensics specific competition, because they give you a variety of things to try. They give you that kind of instant gratification that I talked about in one of the other answers. And they really expose you to things that you might encounter in the industry. So while I have a whole bookshelf of books about digital forensics and digital evidence and hacking, etc., I use those as reference materials, right? I might have read them when I was in college because I was super excited to know everything, but it was really those challenges and seeking those out. There's a website called ctftime.org, and that is like the go-to center international place to list all of the CTFs. You can find a friend, you can find a team, you can network using them, and just dive in. Don't be intimidated if you can't ask any questions or if you can't solve any problems. Just dive in and give it a go, and that's how you'll learn.
Great. Okay, so we really have to stop. I know there's tons more questions, so if you have a chance, look in the Q&A. Thank you, Emily. It was wonderful. We are going to take a break. The chat is on. Again, if there are any internship or job opportunities that you'd like to share with us, please go ahead and put those in the chat. We will, actually, you were asking about competition. So take a look at the CyberStart America slide we have up during our break. It's an amazing, fun program for high school students. It's intended to inspire and help people discover their love of cybersecurity. It's happening right now. We have 1,800 New Jersey students already participating. We're kind of hoping to get to 2,000. So if you know anybody who's in high school who you think have fun with this, send them the link, okay? So stretch your legs, recover from the inspiration that was Cynthia and Emily. And when we start our poll, you'll know it's time to get started. Okay, we now have our next poll up. Let's see. According to CISA's website, women make up approximately what percentage of the cybersecurity workforce? So 6%, 11%, 25%, 33%. Are we all depressed that all of those numbers are below 50 or 80%? Yes, we are. But nevertheless, what do you think is the current accurate percentage of the women in the cybersecurity workforce? What do you think? Stop Googling, just do it off the top of your head. I think the answer is now 25%. I don't have my notes in front of me. So we're getting there, ladies. We're not where we should be yet, but we're getting there. So we need just a little bit more inspiration, I think. So luckily we have it. Nicole Sette is up, and let me talk to you about where she's coming from. She has a very interesting career start with a stint at the FBI. During her 10 years with the FBI, Nicole performed work as a cyber intelligence analyst and authored intelligence products that were briefed to the FBI director on multiple occasions, as well as to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In her role as the lead cyber analyst for the Newark Field Office's Cyber Squad, Nicole was responsible for formulating investigative strategy and conducting liaison with domestic and foreign intelligence partners. Wow. So today, Nicole is a senior vice president in the cyber risk practice of Kroll, a division of Duff & Phelps. At Kroll, Nicole creates strategic cyber intelligence products. She conducts cybersecurity investigations on diverse matters, including incident response involving email compromise, corporate espionage, account takeover, ransomware, and malware computer intrusions. So we're really digging in deep here. Hi, Nicole. Her expertise includes digital forensics, network analytics, industrial cybersecurity, incident handling, and dark web research. Nicole, we're ready to hear about what it took to build this fascinating career.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. I so appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending the Alice in Cyberspace conference, for taking time out of your busy lives to be here. And I also just want to thank the host for inviting me to present. I am extremely passionate about getting women and young people involved in the cyber career path. So I'm thrilled to be able to speak with you today. And I am completely humbled by the other panelists. I've so enjoyed listening to Cynthia and Emily talk about their careers. It's very inspiring and very humbling. So just another quick introduction about me. As Mandy mentioned, I'm a senior vice president at Kroll. Kroll is an incident response firm, so we respond to hacking incidents, et cetera, and then it's also a private investigations firm. And I help to manage Kroll's cyber threat intelligence team. So that involves anything from working on a breaking ransomware attack to an email compromise. And I particularly specialize in deep and dark web research and cyber threat intelligence. But to get started here, today I'm going to be kind of focusing on talking about, the cyber career path, not just my own, but the way that a cyber career path is very rarely straight and narrow. I go so far as to say it's more often a zigzag or a long and winding road. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to talk for a bit about cyber training. And kind of the key takeaway of this presentation is how cyber training can really be a springboard for your career to sort of make your career what you want it to be and make your career work for you. If you kind of work hard in the beginning and put in the time to take training, that can really help you make your career work for you and your family life down the road. And then lastly, I'll just wrap up by talking about some reflecting back on my own cyber career path, and talk about how it's just important to remain flexible and open to new opportunities. So to get started here, there was a slide there with some bullets about my own career path. I was lucky enough to get started in government when I took a job in 2005 with the Defense Department. I took a job as a federal intern with Army, working as a civilian. And there I received 2 years of really great immersive training in the intelligence and security career fields. The federal intern program then, which I just applied for through USA Jobs, it was a great program that kind of brought you in, trained you up for 2 years, and then kind of fast-tracked you into on-the-job training to be a specialist. So I worked for Army for about 4 years during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as an intelligence specialist. And it was there that I really honed skills in being an intelligence analyst. I would basically collect intelligence regarding the weapon systems we were fielding via Army, and then I would brief any intelligence to the commanding general on a weekly basis. So that really helped to beef up my intelligence analysis skills and my briefing skills. And then I also was able to go back and do my master's in strategic intelligence, which was funded by the Army, by the military. So that was fantastic that I was able to get sort of that free master's degree, which sort of helped me out later on. After learning that the Army base where I was working was relocating, I was lucky enough to get a job offer at FBI Newark. So I was able to stay in New Jersey, which was great. And I was sworn in to that job in 2009 when I was 8.5 months pregnant with my second child. So, that was challenging. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I did end up staying with the FBI. I worked as a cyber intelligence analyst there for just about 10 years. And I received some of the best cyber training in the industry through SANS training courses, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit here. And that helped me to kind of culminated in getting my CISSP, which is a really helpful certification if you're looking to get into a cyber career. It is it was Certified Information Systems Security Professional. And so a lot of the free training I got at the FBI was really helpful in sort of working toward, those certifications in the cyber career field. Around 2019, I received a job offer from Kroll, and that provided a promotion, but more importantly, it provided me the ability to work from home. I have 5 kids, and at the time my children were 3, 4, 7, 9, and 11. And the opportunity to work in a career field that I loved, but to be at home and be able to get them on the bus and off the bus was just a really great offer that I couldn't pass up. So that is sort of why I moved away from government and the FBI. So that is kind of my official career path that was on the slide there. But I really wanted to take the opportunity with this slide to point out that, my career training started, 10 or 15 years before my first job with the government. I think it really started with some of the jobs I had early on. So here up on the screen, I have a picture of one of the first places I worked when I was 13 as a waitress at like a dessert cafe. And I continued waitressing for probably 7 or 8 years through high school and college. And I'm pointing this out because, you might not think that that's an integral step toward a cyber career. But, when you're waitressing, you're balancing multiple people's demands, you're multitasking, you're working in a high stress environment, you're practicing good client communications. And it's kind of funny, these are all things that I really do now as a cyber consultant, at Kroll. So what I wanted to point out is that I know some of you are early on in your career path. And, don't discount whatever job you're working at now while you've got your eye on the prize for a future career. You can take nuggets of information or knowledge, skills, and abilities from any job you're in and hone those skills so that you can use them down the road for your career. So then secondly, later, right after I graduated college, I could not find a job. And some of you may be in this position now. I was, I thought I had checked all the boxes. I was a good student, lots of straight A's, but I was, a few months out and was not getting any replies. So I took my first kind of real job as a sports reporter at a weekly newspaper. And I think I was making something like $21,000 a year, and I had 4 days off for the whole year. That was my great package. And, again, that doesn't really seem like it would be a point on the way to a cyber career. But at the same time, that job helped me so much in honing my writing skills. It was very similar to intelligence analysis and collection in a way. I would go out and I would take interviews with athletes, and I would collect data on a sporting event, and I'd come back and I'd have to take all that data and synthesize it and write a really concise article for the front page of the sports page and have a bottom line up front. And these are all things that I ended up using and I still use today, frankly. And I think it just echoes the fact that never discount the job that you're in. Don't get frustrated, if it's taking a little while to get to the career path in what you want to be. You can take those skills and abilities you're learning and speak to them in interviews. If someone told me, if someone was in an interview and told me how they multitask because they're waitress, I think that's fantastic. I think taking, the hard work that you've done and contributing that toward your career later on in life is a really important aspect. And I just want you all to know that the patience is worth it, and just work hard in whatever, step in your career that you're in right now. And then lastly, I kind of forgot to mention, so I moved to Kroll in 2019, and then I was there for a year and COVID struck. And all of a sudden I found myself in a new career as a homeschool teacher. And so here I am homeschooling, 5 kids intermittently, mostly at home over the last year. And, I think it just really points out that I was so appreciative of the training I did early on in my career, of putting in the time to get my master's degree when it was available to me, putting in the time to take the SANS courses when they were free and available to me, so that I was in a position when I had to be home with my kids where I could sort of still do my job and balance the requirements of family life. And so with that, the next slide is a picture of my kiddos there. I put this up here because, a big part of my presentation is focusing on, specialized training and skills, and putting forth the time early on in your career, investing in yourself, investing in training, and strengthening, sort of the platform and basis of your career, so that later on you might have the flexibility to take a job working from home or to work part-time. But, that those sort of opportunities don't all happen at once. You sort of have to put yourself out there. You have to volunteer and sort of prove your worth. And then once you've kind of invested in yourself, it really helps you to mold your career in a way you would that best fits your lifestyle and your family needs. So with this, I'm going to move into talking a little bit about some free and really low cost training opportunities that are available out there for you all. And I wanted to point out with some of these training slides that, you know, as someone who hires, you know, people for Kroll and looks for interns, you know, on an annual basis, I think, you know, seeing some of the free training options out there, if I saw somebody who was sort of taking the initiative to go above and beyond, maybe they don't have, you know, a degree related to the career field, but seeing that they've kind of gone out of their way to take some extra measure, extra training that's available out there. To me, that's a great sign of somebody who's a self-starter, someone who's a hard worker. And so I highly recommend using some of these courses, if not to bolster your resume, but just to be able to have the content to speak to when you're out interviewing for an internship or a cyber career. So one of the first ones I wanted to talk about is the EDX platform, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It was started by Harvard and MIT. It's a great sort of like a massive online training platform. And they offer so many courses that are really relevant to a career in IT or cybersecurity. For instance, I just put a couple up here that I've enrolled in. I enrolled in this computer science here. It's actually Harvard's Introduction to Computer Science class. So you can do that online. You are literally in the room with freshmen who are taking the same course at Harvard, and you're listening to those lectures just like, you know, those folks who are they're getting that degree are doing. And this one in particular has a really engaging instructor, and it's a great entry to computer science if that's something you're interested in. So I know a lot of you seem to be making that pivot or just getting started in the cyber career. I think enrolling in something like this for free is a great idea to just sort of get your feet wet, learn about computer science, expose yourself to sort of some of the more technical training that's out there. And this one in particular, it's kind of funny. I signed up with my son, who was, I think, 12 at the time, and we both enrolled and watched the lectures together. So very doable, free. I highly encourage you to check out the EDX platform. Another one I put up here is Introduction to Linux. Again, you know, you don't have to have any background for that course. I think it's a great essential building blocks to have some familiarity with Linux if you're getting into the cybersecurity career field. And this is something you can enroll in at any time and sort of just do if you have one free weekend night or something like that. So that's sort of, that's the first platform that I would recommend. Secondly, another one I wanted to put out there is Khan Academy. This is something I use with my kids a lot, but I just wanted to point out that it's not just for kids. They have a great, very wide breadth of courses available, and they're sort of in this curriculum-based form. So they will lead you sort of through the topics in a way that's very gradual and easy to understand. I've put some of the computer science topics up here that are available through Khan Academy. And I kind of highlighted here the intro to HTML and CSS. So, you know, something like building your own website, if you haven't done it, or if you've maybe only kind of started a blog or something, I think coding your own website is a great way to just start getting familiar, you know, with technology. And in this case, again, I did that course with my son, and he kind of coded his whole website from scratch, you know, line by line, using Khan Academy. They had a great interface, you know, to sort of make it very user-friendly. And that's something you could do on your own, again, that you could speak to, you know, on a resume or in an interview. You can send a link to somebody once you've built your site. It's just very gratifying, I think, to learn a skill like that on your own and sort of own it, and nobody can take it away from you. So that is another resource that I highly recommend. Lastly, the last training resource I wanted to point out is Cybrary. This is a great one for if you're studying for any kind of certification. I know some folks in the previous presentation were asking about certifications that they could get. This is a great place to sort of start looking around for those types of things. If you're interested in something like A+, or you want to learn about hardware, or like me, if you are pursuing something like the CISSP, it's a really tough exam, and I had taken some sort of paid courses for that. But then I stumbled upon Cyber, and their training for it was amazing. The preparation that it provided was over the top, and it was totally free. And I could just listen to modules on my phone with my AirPods in when I was doing other things. So it is another really great resource that is totally free. I think there's some paid content, but I think it's a really great starting place if you're looking to expand your knowledge in the cyber area. I'm just going to flip back for a minute here. I wanted to point out one other thing under the EDX platform. I realize that some of you do have technical degrees or a technical background. The other really great thing about EDX is they offer some things called like MicroMasters, and it's sort of like a master's focus. And some of those do have like a low cost associated with them, but you can, delve into more of the security side. Like if you have the IT side, but you're interested more in the security option, or maybe in like a project management option, some of the like MicroMasters programs or master's programs are also like another really great option, particularly if you're someone who's working and has kids, or you're busy with your day job and going to school at night. It's just a great way to supplement your training in an easy and convenient way. Now, to wrap up, I wanted to talk about a few pivot points and challenges in my career that were it's kind of like what was mentioned in the last presentation, where it's sort of a moment where you can either double down and dive in, or you can kind of back off and give up. And that happened a few times in my career where things got really tough. And I chose in most of the situations to double down and throw myself into training or whatever options were there. The first challenge was doing my master's degree, that free master's that was available through Army. It required me going down to Washington, D.C. 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. It was on like a reservist schedule. And I had an infant at the time. And so it was really hard to leave on the weekends. That was my time with him. But we worked it out. My husband would come down with me, and he'd stay there while I went to school during the day, and we'd go out in the evening. And while it was a really difficult couple years, it was so worth it to have that master's degree. I teach now on the side. I'm an adjunct professor at Monmouth University, and I teach cybersecurity. And I wouldn't be able to do that right now if I hadn't made that investment back then to get that master's degree. Another challenge that came up for me was when I switched to the FBI. One of the requirements of the job I was taking was that I had to go to Quantico, to the FBI Academy, to do 2 months of pretty rigorous training upon taking the job. And so, as I mentioned, I was 8.5 months pregnant. I had my son, and then I was just getting back, and he was 5 months old, and they said, okay, you have to go to the FBI Academy Quantico for 2 months. And that was a really hard decision, probably one of the hardest moments of my life, to drive in the opposite direction of my 5-month-old and my 2-year-old. But, as was mentioned before, I spoke up. I knew I had to do it, but I said, hey, can I have a hotel room instead of staying on the Marine base in the barracks? Can I have a hotel room so I could see my family, in the evenings? And they accommodated that. And it helped. It worked out. My husband would drive up midweek. I drive down on the weekends. And in the end, it was great that I did it. And I stayed with the FBI because that enabled me to work part-time for the FBI for about 7 years. And I was able to be home with my kids during the week and be in a career that was incredibly interesting and fulfilling, but still be home with my family. And then the third challenge was the SAMS training. Some technical training, you're going to come upon it. It's going to be really difficult. You're not going to know how to open the zip folder. You're not going to know what the instructor is talking about. And I think, you just need to take a deep breath and, figure it out one at a time. And with the SAMS training, each of those courses that I took, after I would finish and take the exam, I'd go, I'm never doing another one of these again. That's the last one I'm doing. I'm never doing another one of these again. But I'd keep going back. I keep going back and taking another course. And with that, my technical training got deeper and more meaningful each time. And I think, as the other speakers have mentioned, and I'll echo this, it's really important to, when you doubt yourself, to just dig your heels in and know that you can do it. I think many of us in this career field have some bit of imposter syndrome or some bit of self-doubt. And I can't stress enough the importance of raising your hand to volunteer, or raising your hand in a crowded room with questions, and taking the harder path. And like, just to reiterate again, the key takeaway here that I've seen in my career is that making the hard choices up front, taking the training up front, as hard as it may be, is well worth it later on in your career, because it sort of levels the playing field. It gives you certifications that are so valuable in a cyber career, and it gives you the flexibility, to possibly have jobs that work with your lifestyle. So I'll leave it there, so we have room for questions. I'm really excited to hear your questions, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nicole. That was, again, amazing. And we do have quite a few questions. I want to start with this first one, because you were talking about juggling your work and your family and things like that. So if I remember correctly from a talk we had before, your work was mostly remote even before our pandemic situation. And somebody asked, how does your work week look like? Is 9 to 5, 5 days a week? Like, I know everybody's different, but can you share with us what yours might look like?
Sure. And that's a great question. If you could actually see it, you would probably be laughing, because, we have 7 people in my house, and I have 5 kids, ranging in ages from 4 to 13. So there's just a lot going on here, especially with homeschool and COVID. So, in cyber consulting, in my field now that I'm in, it's not so much a 9 to 5 job. There will be days when, I might not get started on things till 9:15 a.m. after everybody's off on the bus. But I might be up at, 9:30 p.m. because a ransomware attack just happened, and they're on the line needing me to collect some intelligence about a certain threat actor group. And so you really don't know what it's going to look like. I think, and that's kind of unique to the IT world and also to consulting. So it's variable. But the great thing about being from home is that I can also schedule in an hour to go over to the school for, a Mother's Day tea, or to run out and get some groceries. And I can often have like my work in my ear where I can do it on the go, which has been really great. The flip side is when I was with the government, it was very much, I worked 6:30 to 2:30. They let me make my hours, which was great. Again, you have to ask, right? I would get up at 5 in the morning while my kids were all still sleeping. I would get in my car by 5:15, drive to Newark, put in my day, and be home by 3:30 to get the kids off the bus. And in that case, I never got bothered at home, right? It was classified, so they couldn't bother me, which was great. So 2 really different perspectives there. And that's something you might want to think about as you're building out your career. Benefits to each, I would say.
I have to say, I would never have expected being in the FBI to be a school-friendly time zone. Like you could have picked the kids up from school. Like
I often did. I
never saw that coming. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at some point I was driving home and picking up five of them, grabbing 2 off the bus stop exactly at 3:30 and running to get the others at 4 from daycare. But I think it's really important, like somebody else said, you really don't know unless you ask. And the government is often really friendly with, moving your schedule around as long as you're getting the hours in. Yeah.
Okay, that's really good. I didn't have that perspective. Here's another question, and you're in the right place to talk to us about this. Somebody says, I haven't seen many people like themselves. So we have a member here who's also at a high level of cyber industry like you. So in your experience, what do you think can be done to get more women and other people of other minorities? How can we're in the industry, let's say, but we're not at the top levels. What's the progress on that? What do you think can make that happen?
I think it starts here. I think it starts in venues like this and with networking, with seeing people maybe who look more like you in positions, in management positions. I think it's partly recruiting. And I think part of it is also people who are now in existing management positions, pushing the envelope and making sure that the hiring practices are fair across the board, that there's diversity and inclusion policies. But sometimes, you're not in a position to push those things until you're a little bit more into your career. So it's a little bit of a, I don't know, I think it's a tricky topic, but I certainly think with time, I hope the cyber career becomes more inclusive and more diverse. But I think for my part, it starts with recruiting, like in hiring interns, on LinkedIn, making networking with people on LinkedIn, and just sort of including more people in your circle, in that networking circle, to bring in as many good talented people as we can.
Okay, so here's the last question. I'm torn because there's like so many good questions in here, but I'm gonna go with this one. Hold on a second. I want to get their wording properly. Okay. So it sounds like a great opportunity for the younger generation. And I think we are talking a lot about people who are entering or transitioning like in their 30s. But what about somebody maybe more my age? And that's an uncertain age. But, so I wanted to look for something more interesting. What do you think the opportunities are truly like for that?
I mean, Mandy, I guess I think that like having that skill set that you have, or that any of the ladies on the panel have, like, I think that just opens doors. Personally, I think it doesn't necessarily, I might sound idealistic. I think it doesn't necessarily matter, what we're looking like, what male, female. I'm really starting to have the hope and the optimism that people that have the technical training, the technical background, the career training, if they want to switch fields, if you'd like to switch fields, I think that the opportunity's there. And I think reaching out through our networks, attending conferences, talking with people afterward, for anyone who's here, reaching out. When I teach my cybersecurity course, I'm always telling my students, please email me. And I have students in that class too. It's been really great to see in the cybersecurity graduate course I teach, who are all gamuts, of life. Just came out of undergrad, someone who's totally making a career switch. Somebody had I think a grandchild in the last class that I taught. And it's really, uplifting to see the different ideas coming from all sorts of people. And I really think we're better when we have like a more diverse pool of applicants, a more diverse pool of people thinking about problems. So yeah, I think it's doable with the training for sure.
I love that. So I can just put aside my age and just go for it. And I've been trying to follow that path. By the way, I'm pretty sure Monmouth University is going to get overwhelmed with demand for the graduate course. So just be prepared for that. Nicole, thank you so much. You might want to take a peek in the Q&A. There might be a few questions left over for you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I would like to welcome, let's see, I think we do have one more break. We have our lightning speaker coming up, Devin Valentine, and then I'll be speaking and I'll be addressing a lot of the questions that I saw today about competitions. What are the specific ones? What are the conferences? How do I get the skills? So we kind of knew you'd be building up those questions, and that's what my talk, which is the last one for today, will be about. So stretch your legs. When you see the poll coming up, we're coming back. Devin Valentine from our Cyber Ops National Guard will talk first for 5 minutes, and then I'll give you 15 minutes of my thoughts on how to get skills. Yeah, see you soon. On average, how long do you think it takes to fill a cybersecurity position? Do you think it's 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, or 9 months to a year? Now, we're not talking about those special positions that take a whole year for somebody to clear, to get clearance, right? To get top level clearance, that we know those take a while. We're talking about, I put out a job position and now I'm looking for applicants and I'm interviewing them. I'm trying to find somebody with the right skill set for me to hire. How long do you think it takes to fill a cybersecurity position? And Director Garrity said, right, that there are 13, I think Director Maple said there are 13,000 positions open in New Jersey right now. How long is it taking to fill those positions? What do you think? Okay, you guys think it's 41%, 3 to 6 months. On average, it actually takes, I believe, 6 to 9 months. Why don't I have the answers to these? I wonder. Okay, so we'd like to welcome Devin Valentine. I'm not going to go through a big introduction because Devin, we've got you only for 5 minutes. We want to give all that time to you.
Hi, Mandy. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Good. So Thank you for having me. My name is Devin Valentine, as stated. I'm in the New Jersey Air National Guard. I'm a cyber warfare officer. And in my squadron for the Air Force, we do vulnerability assessments utilizing tools such as Zeek, Moloch, Suricata, Kibana, Splunk. And then also as a civilian, I work as an IT security operations specialist at CLS International, investigating cases and onboarding tools and vulnerability assessments and configuration management. But how'd I get here, right? So within my undergrad, I did a lot of substitute teaching, teaching IT skills to kids. And then I went on to join the Army National Guard for New Jersey, hired as an IT support specialist, I suppose, a 25 uniform in the Army, if for those who know what that is, but you're essentially a jack of all trades. So you're responsible for routers, switches, radios, satellites, VoIP, right? It's just endless. So you have to understand like a crazy amount of tools. So it was a lot to go through the training, but I did it, and I didn't know anything about radios, and I didn't know that much about routers and switches, but I did it anyway. So once graduating, I went on to work for the Navy doing IT desk side support, I should say. And then I went to work for another systems admin with the Army. And eventually I said, well, let me do the active guard with the Army. And so within that role, I was responsible again for routers and switches, but implementing an entire network in the middle of nowhere. So just think a bunch of trees in the dirt, and I have to have a network set up to allow for command and control of the battle space for these commanders. And I was petrified. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Not only that, but it was just so much equipment on me, one person, that I had to do it, and everyone depended on me to allow this space, and they had to be able to call from one, I guess, tent operating space to another, and it was so much. And I remember racking my brain, like researching, reading, building networks, relying on other team members, calling other states, just as much research as I possibly could to learn about all these tools. And at the end of the day, they depended on me, and I had to execute, and I did. And the first time I did it, I was just like, I can't believe I stood up an entire network in the middle of this field. And it was incredibly rewarding at the end, but just managing the insane amount of equipment and having so much pressure to perform, I learned quick, and I learned a lot. So from there, I said, you know what, I'm really tired of sleeping outside and being in the Army. So I should go in the Air Force. And I wanted to go active duty because I wanted to be in cybersecurity. And I knew that they were going to give me incredible training, and I was going to get the certifications, and I was going to get everything that I needed to know to equip myself, one, to function in a cybersecurity role, but then to one day transition out of the active duty service. So I was trucking along, and I was turning all my gear in, and I ran into a commander that was, I didn't know at the time, but he was a CISO at my current place of employment. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to go in the active duty. I need cyber skills, and I need them. I need them like I need air. And he said, listen, I've seen you work, and I know your work ethic, and I know what you're capable of. And I'm just in awe in what you've been able to accomplish while at the company. Come work for me. And I said, what? Come work for you. Okay. So that was an opportunity that I pounced on. I interviewed, and I obviously had to get the team on my side as well, right? Because I had to work with these people. So once doing that and solidifying that job opportunity, I left the active duty component behind. And I said, well, I still want to serve my country. So I pursued the National Guard 140th Cyber Operations Squadron as an officer. And I went into that interview. I've never been an officer. But I looked at my commander, current commander now, and I said, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to build your airmen, and I'm going to instill skill sets here, and I'm the person you want. Luckily, I got hired. So I say a lot of this, and I'm not touting the military because they've given me so much. I've gotten the SANS Network Forensic Analyst course, and as Nicole said, that was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life, aside from sleeping outside and not showering, right? But I studied for 5 hours a day, or not 5 hours a day, 5 days, 16 hours a day, and I was 6.5 months pregnant. On top of that, I have Security Plus, which the military also gave me, that's required to work on a DoD system. And I also have the security certified practitioner through ISC squared. I got on my own, but and the gamut, the schools, the knowledge, there's just so much that the military pumps into people to get them up to speed. And I'm very thankful for that. But what I'm getting to is, you don't have, it's not the military. I realized, hindsight's 2020, that I could have done all of this and landed exactly where I'm at and had the opportunities and gotten the job if I would have just done it, in the civilian world, with exactly what I did. I put the pedal to the metal. I instilled training in myself. I was going on the cyber area, and I was learning, and I was calling, and I was building a network of people and information, and studying as much as I possibly could, and ingesting all this information. And it's what you prepare for leading up to, and you are able to apply, and you're going to be amazing. And don't ever let anybody tell you, as a matter of fact, don't tell yourself no. Let somebody else tell you no. And if it is a no, you get those skills and you implement them and you apply them, and you be the best that you can be, because it's all possible. Just one foot in front of the other, building blocks on top of building blocks. Thank you very much for your time.
Excellent. Thank you, Devin, so much. Okay. We don't do a Q&A right now because we're going to move right to our next presenter. And actually, that next presenter is me. We do have a slight change. I don't know if everybody noticed that Maureen Shrewsbury was originally scheduled for this spot, and I was supposed to be next week. But Maureen lives in San Antonio. So she's currently without power in a very cold house, trying to keep warm with a fireplace and keeping 4-year-old twins happy during this blackout. We are actually thinking of all of our cybersecurity friends in Texas and the other states that are going through this weather situation. And we hope they'll stay safe and that they'll be able to join us next week. I'm not going to go through a long intro on myself because we're running about 5 minutes behind, and I'd rather get right to my talk, which is about how to get the cyber skills. And we've seen quite a few of those in the Q&A. So I'm hoping that my slides will answer some of those questions. So you can see my resume later. Let me just get to, let's get right to the meat of it, shall we? Okay, so if we can bring up my slide set and let me have control, and I will get us started. Let's see, I should have it. There we go. Okay, excellent. So, theory and application, right? You could go to school, you can take some classes, which I have taken so many of them, some of the ones that people have recommended here today. And that's all great, right? But do you know what you're doing? And so I always use this analogy. If a carpenter applied for a job because they know about wood and sawing and everything like that, but they'd never actually touched a hammer, they'd never actually tried to work with a saw, am I going to hire you? I don't think I am, right? I do expect you to have some experience with your tools. And obviously you all know that. You've been asking that question throughout this presentation. So what are the skills I need and how do I get them? Probably not in the classroom. You're going to be introduced to them in a classroom, but you're probably not going to become practiced with them in a classroom. Okay, so how do you get them? Well, first thing is you need to become, if you're not already, some of you already are, that go-to person. I love this t-shirt because, You know, friends always are asking me about how to fix something or do something. And I always are like, did you turn it back on? Did you unplug it? Those are actually valid tech support techniques. But I also sent out a blast to all of my friends about a week and a half ago saying, absolutely, categorically now, update your iPhone. You have to, I'm telling you. Or I'll get questions from people. Do I need a password manager? You know, I think I just got phished. So be that person, because every time you answer one of their questions, you're developing your own skills. You're researching to make sure you're giving them accurate information. I remember the first time I took apart a computer. If you haven't done it yet, go find an old laptop, take it apart, put it back together. The more you break things and fix them, the better you will understand the whole process of cybersecurity and technology in general. So we've been talking about courage, not being afraid. Don't be afraid to break things. Go out and break something. Not right now because you're using this computer, but go break something, okay? Let's see, step number 2 is going to be, let's play with some tools. Okay, now you broke some stuff. Now I want you to maybe hack, maybe investigate, maybe do some incident response. So if you're going to stop a hacker, if your job is going to be in defense in some way, shape, or form, you need to know what tools and tricks they're using. That's going to make you more hireable. And often people will say, okay, well, go ahead and set up a home lab. Buy yourself a $35 Raspberry Pi, create some virtual machines, you know, play around. On this slide, I've got some examples of tools that I think I would recommend you get started with. Wireshark is for looking at network packets. Volatility is for memory. I tend to specialize my interest in forensics. So those two are more forensics tools. Nmap and Metasploit are more offense tools, I would say. Ghidra is reverse engineering. Cyberchef is this really cool, kind of new tool that does almost everything. Experiment with these and notice the red letters. One caveat, don't do this in any network except for your own. That is actually one of the first things that people learn in this industry is to be careful of your scope. So let's say you are experimenting on your home network. I want you to walk around the house and tell every single person what you're doing, okay? Because you could accidentally capture one of their conversations. You can infringe on their privacy. You could actually break the network in your home. Probably not. But network scope for experimentation is important. You want to develop that correct skill as well. Okay, so somebody's going to say, I can't set up my own home lab. Not a problem. We have an answer to that. Ready? I want you to go participate in those competitions that we've been talking about. And you may notice that you recognize somebody in this picture. I'll talk about that in a minute. But here are my favorite competitions. And some of them are not listed on ctftime.org, which Emily mentioned. CTF Time is, I think, restricted only to team CTFs. And there's lots that you can play as a single, as just yourself. So NYU Seesaw is the one that Emily won an award in. Pico CTF registration opened yesterday. It's targeted to high school students, but it's open to everybody. People play it all over the world. It's excellent practice. Cyberstart America is going on right now. That is targeted to high school students, but there's a college and grown-up version called Cyber Fast Track. I used to run it. I'm telling you, it's pretty much the same thing. And it's a great opportunity to really delve into challenges. They have cool hits. It's really learning. Cyberstart America, Pico CTF, and Cyber Fast Track, and National Cyber League are all very targeted to people who want to learn, generally regardless of your age. National Cyber League, I think, just started their spring session, so also known as NCL. And then lastly, Cyber Patriot is the high school cyber defense competition that the Air Force runs, and CCDC is a similar version for college and graduate students. So if you happen to be in those, age groups, play as a competitor. But if you're trying to figure out how to develop your skills, come in as a mentor. They need you. So I just jumped into Women Unite over CTF, CTF over the weekend. And it was really over my head, I have to say. I got stuck on one challenge and I couldn't solve it, but it was a black hole. I stayed with it. The fun thing was it had a Slack channel where you could go in and talk to other people, complete strangers, other women. We probably spent 7 hours together working on a challenge. It was just wonderful. I learned so much, and it was just because I made time for it. Okay. So let's take a peek at this picture for a minute, because this is not unique. That's the wonderful thing about this. So you can see Emily there. She ended up at Morgan Stanley in digital forensics. Her two partners, Mike and Ryan, are now programmers at Bloomberg. Highly successful careers. And I'm not giving anything away by saying that they did not end up with college before they went into those careers. They took a different side. They started and then moved over right through their careers. There's a gentleman in the back, Jared, who ended up, he was going to be a chemical engineer. He swore he was going to do that. He actually ended up at AWS, Amazon Web Services, in cybersecurity. There's a young man in the back also who's doing some work in cybersecurity at Clear, the people in the airport. And the young man on the left is doing technical support. I think it's at Priceline. I'm not positive. So they all ended up in highly satisfying and generally very rewarding careers. I can tell you that if you talk to other cybersecurity educators like myself, that this regularly happens, that these students get involved in competitions, it clicks for them, and they pursue it as they go into college and into their careers. So don't have to be a high school student to do that. Okay, for those of you who, well, let's just use the title, create something, make something. I told you to break something. Now I want you to make something. And if programming is your thing, a lot of you are coming from computer science, then contribute to a GitHub project. Go on GitHub, look for somebody who's looking for somebody to contribute. There's so many projects. Contribute. You don't really realize how big a deal that's going to be on your resume when somebody's looking to hire you, right? So thank you for changing my slide. I appreciate it. So contribute to that GitHub project, okay? If you really have some good skills in reverse engineering, look for bug bounty programs. You can make a little money. Again, that's going to look amazing on your resume. You should have noticed that there are cockroaches crawling across this PowerPoint. This is an example of something that I did for a Cyber Patriot team. They needed to practice virtual machine. And I bring this up as an example because as I was trying to install this piece of malware, this cockroach thing, right? It was hard. It was difficult. I not only wanted to install the malware, but when they killed the process, I wanted it to be persistent. I wanted it to pop up again 10 minutes later, and then 10 minutes later. That was such a learning experience for me. There are Cyber Patriot teams who need help, either by you can just create these VMs and post them online, or you can find a team to mentor. Every time you create something, you will be solving a problem. And it will be something that you can speak to, and that adds to your skill set. Okay, let's make the cockroaches go away. There we go, cool. Okay, so the other thing that you should be doing, and I think this goes back really to what Cynthia said way back at the very beginning of this session, stay on top of cyber news. She talked about being able to write, being able to express yourself. Look at examples of that, and be able to speak about what's going on in the industry that you want to become such a large part of. And the best way to do that is to follow information security people on Twitter. I recommend Twitter highly, but you've got Reddit, you've got podcasts, you've got blogs. And I have some examples here of people that I follow. If you use them as jumping off points, you'll find even more people to follow. Hacks for Pancakes is Leslie Carhart. She's a person I admire quite a bit as a woman who's done some really great work in cybersecurity. So check out her stuff online. But I don't want you to just passively follow them. I don't want you to just look at their tweets and go, oh, cool, or like them. I want you to use that reading, these podcasts and these blogs. I want you to be able to explain to somebody what just happened in the cyber news. So for example, the Florida water treatment case where somebody tried to remotely access that Florida treatment. Did you know what happened? Do you know how they got in? Do you understand how the remote access software was part of the issue? Or let's take it a step further, the example that's on the screen. Do you understand what's going on with SolarWinds? When somebody says, Orion, SolarWinds case, supply side attack, can you put those pieces together and explain it to like like somebody who's not in cybersecurity? That should be a goal. You're going to be asked to do that in an interview. So develop that knowledge based on people that you respect as authority for that information. I think this might be my last slide. Second to last slide. So I hope I'm on time. Conferences. We heard a lot about conferences, and I highly recommend them, whether it's a virtual one like this, which is great, but honestly, you want to go to conferences not only to learn, but to network. This is where you're going to make connections. And it's kind of hard to make those connections if you just show up. You're going to feel like a noob. You're not going to know how to talk to people. So what should you do about that? Well, participate. Any conference is going to be willing to let you stand behind a table and hand out t-shirts or give out agendas or help direct people. And when you become part of the inside group that's organizing t-shirts, you're having lunch with them, you're talking to them, you become part of that team. Assist at a workshop. You're maybe not proficient enough to do a workshop, but you can certainly help somebody do one. You can give a lightning talk like Devin just did, 5 minutes, right? That wasn't bad. You can do that. And talk to us about why you want to get into cybersecurity or the worst thing that happened. I saw a lightning talk once about a woman who wanted to become a nurse, but then in her first couple of classes, she realized she couldn't handle blood. And that's how she transitioned to cybersecurity. It was a great little talk. I have two conferences up here on this slide. Women in Cybersecurity is coming up in September. And there are B-Sides conferences everywhere, in almost every major city in the United States. Find the one in your area. They're small. Don't go to DEF CON. Don't go to Black Hat. You don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm scared of those conferences. Maybe someday. But right now, go to the smaller ones that are in your niche and that you have interest in, okay? Let me finish up with one last piece of advice. So you're probably saying, okay, I can't afford to do all that. You know, you're talking about CISSP courses and SANS certifications, which are never free, and attending conferences, and I can't do that. I don't have the money. I can't do it. Well, you're wrong. You can. There are deals out there. There are scholarships. If you apply to WESIS, they have a scholarship for hotels, meals, conference. Cyber Fast Track and the SANS Cyber Talent Academy is giving away free courses. I once won $20,000 worth of courses from a competition. Black Hills, go online and find Black Hills. They're doing a what you can pay pricing on their courses. There's lots of deals out there. And sometimes all you have to do is ask. Right? We heard that from a couple of our speakers. So this is a good place for me to stop. We will have the question and answer open to both myself and Devin because we didn't get a chance to ask her questions. And or any questions about something that happened today. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A. It doesn't look like we have any questions right now. And we are just at 2 o'clock. Somebody asked, well, I'm sorry, we do have one. Is it possible to play those games if you are outside the USA? It depends. It's a really, really good question. Some of them will be blocked if they have prizes that are specific. So for instance, Cyber Fast Track, their prizes are only for people who have a residency in the United States because the prize is a scholarship. On the other hand, there will be other CTFs that are just money prizes or don't have any prizes. So try it out. You never know if they're going to block your IP or whatever. You could always use a VPN, right? So get used to VPNs. See what you think. Let's see if we have any questions. Somebody says, I am in the AirGuard 2, super cool. So Devin, you might want to answer that one. And I'm now going to hand this over to my teammate, Jennifer Poland from the New Jersey KIC, and she's going to close us out for today.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer Poulin with the NJCCIC Governance, Risk, and Compliance Bureau. I wanted to close the event today with some thoughts and reminders for next week. First, though, I want to thank all of our amazing speakers, Cynthia, Emily, Nicole, Devin, and of course, Mandy. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and advice from your experiences that you've gone through in the cybersecurity field. I did want to mention one thing that Emily had a great suggestion. I started coding websites 26 years ago, so you can imagine what those look like. And Emily, that was a great suggestion. Start coding something simple. Code websites so you can see the structure around the tags and everything. So that would be my advice: is start simple. Start with something simple. I'd also like to remind everybody, next week we're going to come back with 4 additional speakers for their pathways to cybersecurity, to the cybersecurity field. We are recording this session, and next week's session, we'll post that on our website afterwards. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. Those of you that are NJCCIC members, thank you so much. We value your membership in our community. If you're not a member, you can go to our website at cyber.nj.gov and sign up for our free membership. We'll send you our weekly bulletin, training announcements, conference announcements, all those wonderful things and wonderful products that our CTIA folks put out. We look forward to seeing everybody next week. And we look forward more so to seeing everybody at future events, but in person next time. So thank you, Mandy and the team at the CCIC, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.